Always the latest news and views. You're listening to the Montreal Now podcast with Aaron Rand.
Jean-François Lisée, former leader of the PQ, and of course he was for some time a regular here on our show in the afternoons, has been very, very busy writing not a book, but a couple of books at least, focusing on René Lévesque and Pierre-Elliott Trudeau over the past couple of years. He is on the line. Jean-François, welcome back. It's good to have you here.
Aaron, good to talk to you. Thank you.
I think the last time I saw you, you were in the midst of the first book, which has come out. That book was called Their Youths, Our History, again, about René Lévesque and Pierre-Elliott Trudeau. This time, you're kind of moving a little bit forward. It's called Their Quiet Revolution, Our History. And now you're following them as they enter politics and actually begin to, I guess, know and understand each other. Is that accurate?
Well, it's the two books is half of the four books that will eventually be written on the parallel biography of the two. They had met around 57, 56 at Radio-Canada. They had been more or less in contact, but once Mr. Lévesque becomes Minister of Jean Lesage, he decides that he wants to bounce ideas with a group of people that he respects. Mm-hmm. And so every second Friday, his brain trust on the Friday night at mostly Gérard Pelletier's house in Westmount, they meet. And so people there are Jean Marchand, André Laurendeau, who's the writer for Le Devoir, and Pierre Trudeau. And basically, this is the period of a year and a half to 2 years when Pierre-Elliott Trudeau is more or less an advisor, a freelance advisor to Minister Lévesque on a number of issues, and of course they are at odds on the opportunity of nationalizing electricity. That's one of the main subjects that they go over.
I think you pointed, if I read the review right here, obviously they began not as adversaries, as you just mentioned, right? But it turned into, when you talk about, nationalizing hydro, but that sort of differentiation happened relatively quickly or not?
Well, Trudeau, I explained in the first book that when he was young, in his 20s, was in favor of independence, but a right-wing independence, and then in the 50s, he becomes more anti-nationalist because he rejects the right-wing ideology that he professed back then, but he also rejects nationalism in the same stroke. So Lévesque himself is only becoming a nationalist in the late 50s and the early 60s. But what brings them together was, of course, their opposition to Duplessis, the opposition to right-wingers. They are both very much democratic socialists. At first, they're both in awe of Fidel Castro. They are both against American imperialism. And so they have a number of issues on which they agree. They're very liberal. They're very progressive in many areas. What differentiates themselves is, and Trudeau supports Lévesque being in the Lesage government. In his Revue Cité Libre, he does call for everyone, even progressive and people who are close to what will be the NDP, to just vote for the Liberals because Lévesque is there. And in the 62 election, where the issue is nationalization, Trudeau says, well, I thought the money would have been better spent elsewhere, but since that's the issue, we should vote for the Liberals again in 62 and for Lévesque. So there's more that unites them at that point in their career, and that's the period in which they are the most in regular contact of all of the lives.
You wrote, or one of the quotes I guess that I saw was you saying, you write for people, this is your quote, you write for people who know nothing about this. What does that mean?
Well, that means that someone who knows nothing about Quebec politics, who doesn't know who these people are, I will explain everything, and then I will bring them very far on what these people are doing, how they meet, what are the ideas that they put forward, what's the debate, what is their behavior towards each other. So it's not for someone who you don't have to have read about Quebec history to delve into these books. These books are written to initiate yourself to the history of Quebec, the modern history, through the lives of two of the major players. But then I synthesize what we know, and I add to what prior biographers had done.
I will point out, by the way, this is not exactly what you would call light reading. Your book is almost 500 pages long, and you have done massive amounts of research. And if I understand right, Jean-François, you have dug up some stuff that up until now perhaps no one would have even known.
That's right. In the first book, for instance, these people are young adults when their draft comes in for the Second World War. So it's very much an important issue and even a trauma for them. What no other biographers of Trudeau had found out before is that he's been officially drafted twice. And he was only deferred because there was a judge who was a commissioner on the deferment board that liked him very much and made it so that he wouldn't be drafted.
Wow.
So that was never told before. And even Trudeau kept this very secret. His mother knew because the draft letters came at their house in Outremont. But even during the time when he was fighting against the draft, he writes to good friends, and we have these letters where he says he muses about the war. Is he missing the war? Is it a good or a bad thing? But he never says, oh, by the way, they're expecting me with my lunchbox next Friday at the barracks.
I will also ask, with respect to writing a book like this, I mean, this is obviously a labor of love for you, and it has been for quite some time. What drew you to this story specifically?
Well, I thought that there was a dramatic arc between Trudeau and Lévesque that is just unbeatable. It's a saga. I mean, they're both teenagers during the Great Depression of the 30s. They have issues with the war, and then in the 50s they are both against Duplessis, and then they become friends in this period where he's a member of the Brain Trust, and then they will become enemies. So the dramatic arc is just superb, and they go through 60 years of history. At first, they are pushed to and fro by history, and then they make history. And our century would not have been the same without these two guys. So I thought it was a wonderful story to tell, and to tell the story of the history of Quebec and part of Canada through their eyes and through their actions by making the reader come into the room. And every time I can, you're into the room, you listen to them, I'm trying to write a thriller with the constraints that everything has to be true.
You really feel a responsibility here, don't you?
Well, the first one, it was a bestseller, more than I thought. And people say, well, history teachers are using it. And so even more than for the first book, I have to get this right. That's why the drafts are reread by historians and by people who lived through these periods. So I want to make sure that everything is done right in case it becomes popular.
I'm going to run out of time. I want people to know again. By the way, the book is available in English or just in French?
I'm waiting for calls, but for now it's only in French.
Okay, so Leur Révolution, tranquille, notre, histoire. That's the book in French?
Yep.
Okay.
The second book in French, and the first is Leur jeunesse, notre histoire, but it's in all good libraries, in all good bookstores.
Is the second book already out now?
Yes, it's out now.
So if you don't mind, as I said, I got to wrap up. I would love to take, just 2 seconds here to get your take on what you're seeing politically in the province right now, because we used to have you on here on a regular basis as an analyst. And obviously, even in the midst of writing books, you're still paying, I'm guessing, a lot of attention to what's happening in provincial politics. So with respect to Christine Frechette, what's your take so far?
Well, I think she's in the mix, as Martin Saint-Louis would say, and I think the election will be within the francophone vote, a battle between Plamondon and Frechette. That's going to be the thing. I think she's going to get up somewhat more, and we're going to see a fight between Frechette and Plamondon to know who's going to win.
So you're writing off the Liberals altogether?
Yes. because the worst thing that could have happened to Charles Millard, who's a very competent guy, is a woman clone of him coming into the scene. I mean, he would have been much better with Bernard Drinville to differentiate, but now it's very tough to differentiate between Charles Millard and Christine Fréchette, and she's more attuned to the soft nationalist than Charles Millard can ever be.
Last question. Former leader of the PQ, you're looking at what's happening to that party now. As much as Paul Saint-Pierre Plamondon and the party are doing well in the polls, we know that the number of people who actually want a referendum has almost never been lower. He's obviously not going to give that up. What do you think happens here when, pollsters are telling you, people are telling you, we're not interested right now in a referendum or separation, yet that's number one on his agenda? What do you do?
Well, I think the message he's trying to get across is that, and he understands that Trump is pushing everyone towards a nervous breakdown. The level of anguish towards uncertainty is very high, and so he's trying to explain that there won't be a referendum until Trump is gone. He has said that a couple of times. I don't think it has seeped in completely, but that makes him in a position to differentiate the vote for the provincial government and then a vote for the referendum that would come only 3 years hence.
Okay. Listen, I always appreciate talking to you. I wish you the best of luck with the book, and I hope we can chat again.
Sure. Thank you so much,
Thank
Eric.
you.
The newest tracks. Let's go. New music. And the next big thing.
Always on the new music first.
Your first place to hear it all.
'Cause you gon' like it, love it, wanna play it twice. Playing now.
iHeart New Music. Your digital station for brand new drops, fresh finds, and tomorrow's bangers. Powered by North by Northeast Music Festival. Taking place June 10th to 14th across Toronto. iHeart New Music. Stream now, online, on your smart speaker, and preset on the free iHeartRadio app. Hear it live. Weekdays from 2 until 6. Or hear it now. You're listening to the Montreal Now podcast with Aaron Rand.
If you go back a little while ago when Marc Carney, our Prime Minister, was in China, came home and said, we've worked out a deal where Canada will be bringing, I think the number might have been around 49,000 cars, Chinese-built EVs into this country. And I think at the time we posed the question, look, the rationale for this is, yes, these cars happen to be a whole lot less expensive than EVs that you could buy here at the time. Now, I know we have a rebate system here as well, depending on the province you happen to live in, but that first part of that deal is already happening now. In May alone, nearly 3,000 made-in-China electric vehicles arrived here, and there will be more coming. And I guess the question now is, will you consider buying one? And if you do, where would you even go? Because as we found out, I think this was just a couple of days ago, some of those Chinese EVs are not the companies you may have heard of, like BYD, for example. Some of them, at least the first part of them, are from Tesla. Yeah, that same Tesla, but they're manufactured, they're built in China and coming here. So I thought we could try to shed a little bit of light on this. Maybe you're in the market to buy one and thinking, well, can this be a score because they're going to be so much less expensive than the ones you could buy now? Daniel Breton is President and CEO for Electric Mobility Canada, and he is on the line. Daniel, thanks for being here this afternoon. So can I begin with that? First of all, this idea of these Chinese EVs, the first batch are in fact Teslas, so you would have to buy those, I guess, from a Tesla dealership.
Yeah. And to tell you the truth, I wouldn't be surprised if the majority of the vehicles that first come to Canada will be coming from those manufacturers that we already know that sell cars in the country. It could be from Tesla, it could be from Volvo, Polestar, but they could also come from Ford or GM, because keep in mind that Ford and GM already do sell gas cars built in China for the Canadian market. So for them, it's not a big stretch to get some of those cars that they build in China that are electric to get them to come to Canada as well.
Wow, so we this is not part of this deal where we specify which manufacturers. Basically, it's just if it's made in China, if it's an EV, it would qualify?
Exactly.
Okay, I had no idea. I mean, I assumed, wrongly, that, we looked at cars, and I know I saw these in videos, cars like the BYD manufactured cars, which look amazing, high tech, cost less money. At the end of the day, are you implying that these cars that are coming here from China won't cost a lot less than what you could buy now?
That's a great question. So we are expecting to see more affordable cars coming from China that will be partially or fully electric. The truth is that when people are talking about Chinese electric vehicles, in the specifications from Global Affairs Canada, the cars could be electric, but they could also be plug-in hybrid and hybrids as well. But if you look at the Tesla Model 3 coming in from China, it's being offered below $40,000. So it is really reasonable. If you add $2,000 from the Quebec government, it means that you end up having an electric car from Tesla at $37,500 or so. We're getting close to the price of an entry-level gas car. We are seeing that it's starting to have an impact on the purchase price of other cars offered by other manufacturers not coming from China, because obviously this will have an impact on competition. And I think this is great news for consumers, but let's be honest, the price of new cars, whether gas or electric, is getting quite expensive,
right,
especially gas cars. So obviously people are looking for more affordable options. So now going back to Chinese manufacturers themselves, I mean, I've been in discussion with different car manufacturers from China. I went to China 3 months ago, and we are seeing a lot of choice in very affordable cars made by Chinese manufacturers, as well as mid-level and very expensive, super sophisticated Chinese cars as well. So you have the whole range of Chinese electric cars.
So when you say super sophisticated, I mean, would that be at a price point that's comparable to what you would spend for that car here, or still considerably less?
I think there will be not considerably less, but they should end up being less expensive, because there's a price war right now happening in China, meaning that when the same car is being sold in Mexico or Europe, it is very competitive, but it's not as cheap as the same vehicle sold in China. But the truth is that when I went in the past year, I've been to Mexico, I've been to Europe, I've been to China. And the truth is that in Mexico, in Europe, and in China, you can find entry-level electric cars starting at $15,000, $20,000, $25,000 Canadian. So we're very far from that so far. And the truth is that I find that many legacy automakers have been taking the Canadian market for granted and not offering us as many options as those other countries and jurisdictions have been able to get. So I think this competition from Chinese car makers, it will help consumers. On top of that, if you think about the fact that, I don't know if you heard about that, but a few weeks ago, J.D. Powers came up with a report saying that we were getting, for Q1 of 2026, at parity on purchase price points between gas and electric. Now, add the fact that the price of gas has gone up significantly. Yeah. It means that electric cars are really becoming super competitive when it comes, when you're comparing that with ordinary gas cars.
So if I could ask, Danielle, just so I fully understand, that Tesla Model 3 that you described, that's going to be coming in the made-in-China Tesla, right? If you were to go to a Tesla dealership today and buy one of their Model 3s here, how much less would it be to buy one of the ones coming in from China, or can we even try to figure that out?
Well, I mean, right now, the one coming from China is available. People are already taking delivery of these cars. It's already happening.
Okay.
Before that, the Tesla Model 3s came from the U.S. So not only were they more expensive, but on top of that, because they came from the U.S., there was a 25% tariff on them. So, the price difference is significant. I mean, we're talking at least $10,000.
How do you know what you're getting? You go to a Tesla dealership, you want to buy Model 3. Are you supposed to say, I'd like one made in China? I mean...
it's very easy, because they offer two models, if I'm not mistaken. They have one high-performance version that comes from the U.S., which is a lot more expensive, and the entry-level version is coming from China. It's as simple as that.
Okay.
But if you're looking at the Tesla Model Y entry-level, it comes from Germany, and it's also offered below $50,000, which means that when you buy a Chinese Tesla Model 3, you cannot get the $5,000 rebate from the federal government, because they won't allow Chinese-made cars to get the $5,000 rebate. But if you get a German Model Y, you get the $5,000 rebate from the federal government, meaning that the Tesla Model Y, you can get it around $45,000, which is also very competitive compared to gas SUVs.
Now I'm further confused. So you're telling me even with these Chinese cars that are coming in now, whatever ones you happen to buy, you cannot get the government rebates because they come from China?
Yes, exactly.
Oh.
So if you want to buy an electric car, the vehicle has to be sold below $50,000. There you can get up to $5,000 rebate from the federal government.
As long as it's not from China.
As long as it's not from China. But if the electric car is made from Canada, is made in Canada, let's say the Dodge Charger EV, the car can be sold above $50,000 and you will still get the rebate.
Because it's made in Canada.
Because it's made in Canada. And one more thing that nobody knows. The federal government reintroduced their 100% tax credit for self-employed workers and business owners, meaning that if you were to buy an electric car, let's say at $45,000, you make $50,000 net a year as self-employed person. You could get in Quebec approximately $14,000 in tax credits. Instead of taking the $5,000 rebate, you take advantage of the tax credit at the end when you do your income tax at the end of the year. And I did take advantage of that 6-7 years ago when it was 100%. I got $20,000 back because I was self-employed. So that's one thing that nobody knows about.
You do.
And I'm trying to inform Canadians on this fact because, listen, I've been talking about this for years and hardly any dealer talks about this.
But again, you'd have to be below a certain threshold for income.
No, actually, if the more money you make, the more money you can save. And instead of, because if you buy an electric car above $50,000 that doesn't come from Canada, you won't get the rebate. But if you are self-employed and your car is at $70,000, you can still get the tax credit. I know it gets confusing,
you
but
think?
the truth is that there are a lot of advantages these days, and we will pull that all. We'll put all that online in the next couple of weeks on Electric Mobility Canada's website, just to make sure that Canadians are well informed, because there are a lot of opportunities right now, but too many people are confused because the federal government is not the best at communicating these programs.
Well, thank goodness we have you. If people want to go to the website now to look at this, I mean, you can explain it. Did they go to just Electric Mobility Canada?
Electric Mobility Canada. I mean, we don't have all the details yet, but it's going to be online in a couple of weeks.
Last question, because I'm out of time. We talked about Tesla a lot and some of the other cars, like, for example, BYD, which is, the Chinese-made car. Are they coming?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I'm pretty convinced they're coming. I mean, we haven't had discussions this time around, but we've had discussion with BYD over the years, and they're very serious. So I'm expecting BYD, Geely, Xpeng, MG, and others to come to Canada.
Okay. We'll chat again when we get closer to that. Danielle, thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Take care. So again, I'm sitting going, I'm sorry, you get it, you don't get it, a credit you have to make. It's very confusing, but if you want to get some answers, Electric Mobility Canada, go to their website, and as you said, within the coming weeks, because this is all happening very much now, first batch of cars are here, to explain what's rebate, what doesn't qualify as a rebate, because I'm very, very confused.
An iHeartRadio experience.
Jelly Roll, live in Quebec City at Festival d'été de Quebec.
Presented by Bell in collaboration with Coors Light.
You could win VIP tickets for two for July 19th.
With flights, hotel,
and $1,000 cash.
I'm wide awake and I'm dreaming.
Download the iHeartRadio app.
Listen to Pure Country for 10 minutes and enter to win.
Jelly Roll, live
at FEQ.
Every day you listen is another chance to win.
Staying up to date on your schedule. This is the Montreal Now podcast with Aaron Rand.
So we've heard this story all our lives. I'm very intrigued by this next story. We've heard the idea, you know what? You need to get 8 hours of sleep. It has been drilled into our heads, I think, since we were kids. But there is now a new study, which, if you'll pardon the pun, drills down a little deeper to actually qualify and quantify a bit of a more refined suggestion. So we thought we'd take a look at this. Marie-Pierre St-Onge is a professor of nutritional medicine at Columbia University and an expert in the field of sleep health, and she is on the line. Thank you so much, Doctor, for being here this afternoon. And let me begin when I say, we're going to kind of quantify this. It's not a big change, but it is interesting. So this new study, and it's pretty massive from what I understand, 500,000 people here, suggests what now is what's being described as the sleep sweet spot.
Yes. So basically they found that in various organs, getting 6.5 to about a little under 7 was that sweet spot of optimal health for that organ. And once you got below 6.5 and above 8, you start to see accelerated aging, deterioration of health with these types of shorter sleep and longer sleep.
Yeah, which is interesting. We would have got the part about shorter sleep. Is it interesting to note that even longer sleep actually works against your health?
Yes, we actually have some data from population-based studies that show that individuals who have longer sleep also have higher risk of cardiovascular disease, mortality. Longer sleep is often associated with inherent sickness, so sickness promotes sleep. So there's something there as well. So maybe underlying disorders that prompt individual to need more sleep, that may be what's explaining the effect of or that relation with long sleep and poor health.
So so you've been studying this, you've been conducting research for years, and I know you focus a lot on women's issues. Are the numbers different for women specifically?
Slightly. So for women, they tend to be on the upper range of that 6.5 to 7.8 hours of sleep. So women tend to need a little more sleep than men, and we do see that in general population where women typically report sleeping 20 minutes on average longer than men.
And is that physiological? What's the rationale or the reasoning for that? Do we know?
Well, women differ from men in multiple aspects, both physiological, hormonal differences, but also other social factors that come into play when you're talking about sleep duration, sleep quality, in terms of roles in the household and outside of the house. So I think that could be where also women need just more time to recuperate.
Yeah. I will mention the one other thing we said off the top, the sweet spot, as you said, 6.4 to 7.8 hours a night. When you talked about, better overall health, when I saw the note here, when we talk about better overall health, it's everything, right? It's brain, heart, lungs, your immune system. This is pretty sweeping.
Yes, it's pretty much every organ system of the body that's impacted by sleep. So I think, aiming to get good sleep, that includes good sleep duration, but also good sleeping patterns and good quality sleep, continuous sleep, so not very fragmented sleep. It should be on one of the priorities for better health.
Yeah. Do the same rules apply? This idea of, you have to get ready to go to sleep, turn off the phone, turn off the blue light, et cetera. That's still the case? That's still helpful?
Yes, I think so. I think it's helpful to have a ramping down routine.
And what about for people who hear this and say, well, you know what, I can function on much less sleep, and I don't need 6.5 hours, and I'm perfectly fine. I mean, this can't apply necessarily to everybody.
So, there's flexibility in terms of individual differences. When we're talking about population-based studies, it's always averages. There's always a normal curve where some people lie on the longer side of sleep need, and others lie on the shorter side of sleep need. But I also like to tell people that those are things that you don't feel sometimes. So you may think that everything's happening and everything's perfectly fine for getting by on 5 hours of sleep or 5.5, 6. But you're not necessarily feeling that your blood pressure is creeping up, that your ability to handle glucose loads is impaired or getting more impaired, right? So some things you don't necessarily feel on a day-to-day basis that may be impacted by not getting enough sleep. So, if you're able to give yourself more time in bed and sleep more, then that means that you probably should be getting more sleep.
Interesting. And I guess, if you don't notice these things as you described, if you don't notice them from day to day, they're cumulative. At one point, will you kind of get this wake-up call about, hey, you're not getting enough sleep?
Well, yeah, over time, you get aggravation, right, of your beta cells that lead to, increased risk of type 2 diabetes if you keep stressing your system like that.
And what about with respect to, and again, I want to point out the part about this that really surprised me, this idea that if, you get longer sleep over that 8-hour limit, that's actually very detrimental to you, again, in the same way as not getting enough over the course of time.
Yes, that's also detrimental. But, one thing about the longer sleep, there's, oftentimes fewer people who do sleep long. If you require a lot of sleep, maybe, you should get a checkup and see if there's anything, or, maybe that's just what's normal for you.
Okay. But it is something worth looking into if this is something regular for you. If you're getting 9.5, I know people who do this who say, oh my God, I go to bed every night at 9. I'm not up till, 7 the next day, or getting 9, 10 hours of sleep a day. They seem to be, doing okay. But again, this is something you think is abnormal?
Not necessarily. So I think, they could check with their doctors, see if they, have good labs when they do their preventive care. Then I don't think there's anything to worry about.
Okay. So this idea of a sweet spot, 6.4 to 7.8, if you can make that work, that seems to be sort of the median. That's a great place to be.
Exactly.
Okay. We'll leave it at that. Doctor, I want to thank you so much. Appreciate your time.
My pleasure.
The information and the interesting talk to follow. This is the Montreal Now podcast with Aaron Rand.
I'm pleased to announce today the launch and the membership of Canada's new Ministerial Advisory Council on Rights, Equality and Inclusion. It will be chaired by the Minister of Canadian Identity and Culture, Marc Miller. The Council has a clear mission to combat racism and hate in all their forms, and to guide the Government of Canada as part of our efforts to build a fairer, more just, more inclusive society. And I am directing that the first responsibility of that Council is to address anti-Semitism.
That is Prime Minister Mark Carney's announcement on Monday, as you heard him say, appointing a Ministerial Advisory Council on Rights, Equality and Inclusion, which will be chaired by Marc Miller, the Minister of Canadian Identity and Culture, who is on the line. Minister, thank you so much for being with us today. I wanted to start a conversation that we could have here with saying, we've been talking about something needing to be done as far as anti-Semitism is concerned, but most comments I have heard post the Prime Minister's remarks at a synagogue the other night have not been very positive. So let me start with that first of all, and I think the obvious question, I've heard a few people ask this, is why not having, made that announcement, why not have done that in Parliament as opposed to going to a synagogue in Toronto and doing it?
Well, it's a good question and probably a valid critique. I don't agree with it necessarily, Aaron, but, doing it in a temple or synagogue was, I think, an important, more than symbolic sign that he is continuing to take the concerns of the Jewish community, and indeed all Canadians, seriously when it comes to scourge of anti-Semitism. We are failing Jewish Canadians in this country as much as there's been a lot of effort deployed to combat anti-Semitism. It has only grown, and you can point your finger to lots of things, including very polarizing war in Gaza, but it's a multitude of factors, and at the end of the day, you can't escape that truth that we need to do more. The National Unity Committee that he put forward deals and should deal with the issues of our time, including, importantly, anti-Semitism, but we'll be tasked with other ones. But this was part of an announcement to deal with the growing hate, including underscoring a number of laws that we've passed, including Bill C-9, which will make it illegal to protest in front of fair locations, community centers where these events occur, making sure that people are held to account with respect to hate speech. Significant investments in the last budget in protecting those fair locations, including synagogues and temples. So that the reason and the spirit behind it, which I support, but it is by no means an exhaustive list of the measures that we need to take. And I'd also say if the standard for this committee is to eradicate anti-Semitism, I think that is a failure by design. We shouldn't purport to do that, but we have to give it our level best as a country to continue to discuss these issues, have open conversations, and move to make sure that the Jews in Canada can be safe. And that, in some cases, is not the case today.
Well, it would seem to me as you say that, one way to keep people safe is to actually arrest people who violate laws that already exist. And I think people point now to the fact that in that statement by the Prime Minister, this just seems like we're passing the buck. Yes, you're setting up a council. Yes, you're going to look at this. We already know it exists, and we already know for the most part who's involved in some of the hate incidents that have already taken place and continue to take place. Why not simply say, okay, here's what we're going to do. We know where the problem is. We know who's committing the problem for the most part. Let's go ahead and institute some action rather than sitting down and forming a council. What's that going to achieve?
Well, I think a couple of things. I think we can walk and chew gum and arrest people that are breaking the law at the same time in a country like Canada that is not without complexity, meaning, and we've lived that, you and I living in Montreal, where municipal authorities need to be able to implement criminal laws in the way that, including the MUC and the police in Montreal. That is key, but it is something that we must do and make sure that we are doing. Enforcement of those laws is done by provincial authorities in Quebec, but across the country, and it needs to get better. There's no question about it. I don't want to at the same time pretend that people don't have a right to protest. It's an important feature of a democracy like Canada, and in fact, it's a way to vent. And protests should not are not made to make people feel comfortable. But there is a line that cannot and should not be drawn. So to your point, this is not uncomplex, but we have to actually act a little more thoughtfully in making sure that people are being held to account for instances of when they break the law, including the most egregious forms of anti-Semitism and hate.
I will ask another question that's being asked. Why in the Prime Minister's announcement? I appreciate you're not the Prime Minister and, you're having to answer these questions, but people are asking, why did he simply not call out? We know, for example, right, the Jewish population in this country represents roughly 1% of it, yet over 70% of the hate crimes committed have been against it, right? Why not simply call it radical Islam, recognizing that that's been the issue in making that announcement? It
has been the source of that, including radical views coming from people that are distorting Islam. That is absolutely unquestionable. I don't know what I honestly can't speak to what the Prime Minister may or may not have said, but it happens to be an important part of the equation that we have to deal with in the way we deal with these things as a country. No question about it. But I'm not going to parse through what the Prime Minister said. I think his statement was very strong, and I think it denoted the seriousness of the situation. Okay.
I want you to hear this reaction. Melissa Landsman was on CJAD yesterday, and obviously, she is, of course, the deputy opposition leader, and she had this to say, and I want you to react to this. So take a listen to this.
What an abject failure at a time where we needed to see leadership. It would have been better if he said nothing at all.
Well, first, the Conservative... No person, no individual, no Conservative has the monopoly of thought on the Jewish community or its support for that matter. It is a nuanced support that varies from party to party. Melissa makes it a specialty to spew stuff like that. She's accused me of trying to ban the Torah, which is complete horse crap. So it's hard to take some of her words seriously. Conservatives do get sensitive anytime they feel the Jewish community supports any of our policies. I think we have to stand on principle here, Aaron, as Canadians, and say enough is enough. This is not a party thing. It is about every single Canadian standing up and saying no to anti-Semitism. Unfortunately, partisan politics is a feature of this, and sadly, Melissa, who I appreciate personally, is taking the slant, and I think that's unfortunate for the community.
Last question, which is just, now you're chairing this particular committee, this group. What are you expecting will come out of this? And is this one of those things that, this is the announcement made by the Prime Minister, and now we're not going to have to talk about this anymore because it becomes a job of the council that's been set up?
No, and I think, and that's important, Aaron, because the reason I agreed to chair it is because I take this seriously. We could have chosen someone who's not a parliamentarian, who's not responsible for these portfolios in Parliament, and treated it the way you've described. I think that would be a cynical approach. Let's not expect standards that any committee could not meet, and at the same time recognize that there are other measures being taken. But I do expect council members to be active. I may even think that the Prime Minister might himself be active in it, because it was his idea to make sure that we had a committee that was dealing with issues of our time, focusing on national unity, and not the previous iteration of what we had, if you recall, which was a secretariat dealing with anti-Semitism and a secretariat dealing with Islamophobia, and the net result was more polarization, sadly, despite the good intentions of the people that perhaps were heading it. And so let's give it a chance. It isn't, again, the only solution, but it is one element of a really important strategy to make sure Jews feel safe in this country.
What is another solution then beyond this?
You mentioned it before. I think we have to pass our bill combating hatred, entitled C9. It's currently in the Senate. I have hopes that it will pass. It'll make people safer in the places that they pray, making sure that we get our budgetary amounts into community members that support those places of prayer, so community safety funds, and making sure that we continue to have a dialogue in this country that isn't based on, unfortunately, what we've seen in the last few years, which is a very polarized dynamic, fueled in part by the war in Gaza.
Minister, I always appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you, Aaron.
Listen live to Montreal Now with Aaron Rand. Weekdays from 2 until 6. Miss something? Find on-demand highlights at CJAD800.com or on the free iHeartRadio app.
Pride is like love. You feel it in your heart. iHeartRadio, Canada's #1 streaming app for radio and podcasts, including iHeart Pride Canada, your favorite hits and must-have party bangers, plus personalized and curated playlists like Back in the Day Pride.
Come together, celebrate love.
Take Pride with you anytime, anywhere. Just ask your smart speaker to play iHeart Pride Canada. Stream us on your phone or listen now at iHeartRadio.ca.